This cop, she thought she could mess with a black man in uniform and get away with it. Until the general made a phone call. Next thing, you know, the Pentagon's at her door. All this over what was supposed to be a quick stop. General Carlton D. Hayes, he'd driven Highway 280 between Albany and Americus, Georgia, 1,000,000 times. Knew it like the back of his hand. You know, the same old curves, miles of trees, those little gas stations with the beat-up pumps. But today, his GPS went bonkers after an update. So when he saw this gravel pull off past a beat-up green sign that said Ellerville for miles, he slowed down and stopped. Put the car in park and started messing with his phone. Military-grade, encrypted thing, you know? Shuts down if anyone tries to mess with it. He was just wearing a plain polo shirt and some slacks, no sign of his rank. His jacket, the one with his insignia stitched on, was folded up in the back seat. Didn't think he'd need it. 2 minutes, that's all he figured. But then he heard gravel crunching behind him. Looked in the rear-view mirror. Cop car. Lights were already flashing, but no siren. Beat-up cruiser with Schley County Sheriff faded on the side. The driver's door opens up, and out steps this tall woman with blonde hair in a bun. Aviator sunglasses, hand resting on her sidearm. She didn't take her time coming up. No polite good afternoon or asking for his license. Just marched right up to the driver's side and rapped hard on the window. Tab. Tab. Carlton lowered it halfway. Afternoon, officer. What are you doing out here? She snapped. Pulled over to check my GPS. She squinted, looking into the car. Where you headed? He glanced at her name tag. Wilburn. Her voice was sharp. Wasn't curious. It was like she was trying to boss him around. Just fixing my route, he said, calm as could be. Wilburn took a step back and unclipped her holster. I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle. For checking my GPS? You're on private land. This is a known area for illegal dumping. You fit the profile. She didn't finish the sentence. Just stepped back more and put her whole hand on the grip of her gun. Carlton exhaled, opened the door slowly. He was used to being stared down. In Iraq, in Bosnia, even in D.C. meeting rooms with folks who never wore the uniform. But this wasn't how things are supposed to be done. This wasn't right. I'll step out, he said, voice steady. But I want to be clear, I haven't done anything wrong. You're being uncooperative. He frowned. I've done everything you've asked me to do. Wilburn walked him to the back of his car. No backup in sight. No body cam that he could see. Her radio crackled, but she didn't answer. She told him to put his hands on the trunk. He hesitated. Ma'am, I'm a federal officer, he said. My ID is inside the car. Please let me get it. I said, hands on the trunk. She grabbed his arm and spun him around hard. His palm slapped. She kicked his legs apart. He didn't fight back, didn't even raise his voice. Just said something quiet, you're making a mistake. But she wasn't listening. From the road, a pickup truck slowed down. Woman in the passenger seat rolled down her window, just enough to hold up her phone. A teenager in the back was already filming. Nobody jumped in to help, but they were watching. Something seemed off about it all. Something in the quiet, the way the man didn't even flinch, the way the cop seemed more interested in showing off her power than just asking questions. Wilburn was breathing heavy, not from working hard, but from the adrenaline. She had no idea who she was dealing with, not yet. But things were about to change, and it would start with one simple request. I'm not going to say it again. Officer Wilburn yelled, hand still close to her gun. You're being detained. Carlton didn't move. Hands stayed on the trunk. Calm. Controlled. Then I respectfully ask that you call your supervisor or let me get my ID from the car. You don't get to ask for anything right now, she snapped. You wait. Carlton could see the teenager from the truck, standing outside now, still filming. The kid's dad was next to him, arms crossed, just watching, not saying a word yet. The air was thick with tension, like the humidity rolling off the trees. I'm not resisting, Carlton said again, slower this time. But I need to show you who I am. I'm Lieutenant General Carlton Hayes. My ID is in my briefcase in that car. Wilburn scoffed. You expect me to believe that stuff? He let that hang in the air for a second. You don't have to believe me. Just check. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped to the side, radioing something in. Her voice was low, muffled by the static and her own nerves. She used the words suspicious male and possibly armed. That last one made Carlton turn his head a little. I'm not carrying a weapon, Wilburn glared. You military types usually are, though, right? Carlton blinked slowly. You people. She ignored him, went back to the radio. She was asking dispatch to send backup to County Road 19, saying there was a possible situation developing. Carlton didn't say anything. Years of training taught him that the best way to take the wind out of someone's sails is to let them mess themselves up on their own. He looked past her toward the truck. The man in the driver's seat now had his arms resting on the window frame. His face had changed from just being concerned to something harder to read. The people watching weren't just curious anymore. They were starting to get uneasy. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, Carlton said quietly. You don't tell me how to do my job. I'm asking you to do it by the book. She stepped closer. Are you threatening me? His eyes narrowed a bit. No, ma'am. I'm advising you. Wilburn's lips curled for a second, like she thought that was funny. Then she reached for his wallet, still in his back pocket, and yanked it. She pulled out his wallet and started flipping through it fast, just looking at the cards, not really reading anything. Then she froze. See, tucked behind a department ID, was this security clearance card from the Pentagon. Level 4. She didn't say a word for a second, but Carlton could see her jaw tighten up. Where'd you get this? She mumbled. I earned it, over 30 years of serving this country. She closed the wallet and took a step back, but not far enough to make it obvious. Not far enough to admit she messed up. You could have just said that in the first place. I did. Her face got red, but not from the sun. You still can't park here, she said, grabbing at anything she could. Some reason to stand her ground. I wasn't parked. I pulled over to fix my GPS route. She turned away, like she just remembered her cruiser was there. Carlton could see her thinking hard. How this looked, what the videos might show, and what they might not. You'll need to wait here for the responding deputy. Fine. But when he gets here, I want to make a phone call. She turned back, like she didn't believe him. You calling your lawyer? No, Carlton said. I'm calling the Department of Defense. She stared at him, waiting for him to crack a smile. Some kind of joke. But there wasn't one. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. In the distance, a faint siren started up. Another cop finally showing up. But he was still 10 minutes away. And in those 10 minutes, everything was going to change, because this wasn't going to be some quiet story that got swept under the rug. Too many people were watching already. The sirens were getting closer, echoing off the trees. But Officer Wilburn wasn't waiting. Her grip on the situation was slipping, and she knew it. Carlton could see it in the way she was pacing, the way she kept looking over her shoulder at the people watching by the side of the road. 3 cars now all pulled over. Nobody was talking, just recording. She wasn't thinking like a cop anymore. She was acting like someone who was trapped. Turn around, she ordered. Carlton didn't move. I already showed you who I am. You're still interfering with a lawful investigation. I'm not interfering. I'm standing here unarmed and doing what you say. She reached out, grabbed his wrist, and twisted it hard. You're resisting. He clenched his jaw, but didn't fight her. This isn't needed. But it didn't matter. She pulled his arm behind his back and slammed the handcuffs on. Tight. The metal cut into his wrist. People gasped from the side of the road. The teenager had moved closer. He whispered something to his dad, who didn't say anything but raised his own phone to start recording too. Everything's being recorded, Carlton said, his voice low. Not a threat, just telling it like it is. You think that matters? Wilburn hissed. It always does. Sooner or later. She pushed him forward toward her cruiser. The gravel crunched under their feet. Carlton didn't trip. He didn't resist. But she was rough, and he could feel it, not just in her grip, but in her voice. She was trying to prove something, maybe to herself. She opened the back door and shoved him. She shoved him in without a word. No Miranda rights. No saying why he was being arrested. "You're gonna regret this," a voice said. It was the guy with the teenager. He hadn't moved, but his voice was strong. Southern accent. Sounded like he was in his mid-40s. Wilburn snapped. "Mind your own business, sir." "I am," the man said. "This is my business now." Wilburn slammed the cruiser door shut and stomped to the front of her car. She leaned inside, fumbling with the radio, but her voice was shaking now. Carlton sat in the back, handcuffed behind him, breathing in and out slow. He focused on each second. 1, 2, 3. Calm and steady. He didn't know who Wilburn was trying to impress. Dispatch? The folks filming? Herself? But she was losing it. He could hear it in the scared tone in her voice as she told Dispatch what he looked like. She still hadn't really looked at his ID, hadn't called the Pentagon number, hadn't even seen the little seal on the jacket in the back seat, which would have told her everything she needed to know. But someone else had. The teenager walked to the edge of the road and zoomed in with his phone. "It says U.S. Army on the jacket," he whispered. "You got that?" his dad asked. "Yeah. The badge. The stars. Everything." A second siren came up behind the first one. Carlton looked out the window. 2 more cruisers pulled up behind Wilburn's. One from the county sheriff's office and another from the state patrol. Out stepped Deputy Lamar Boyd, a tall man with some gray in his beard and a big build. He didn't pull out his gun. He didn't rush. He walked up to Wilburn, who met him halfway, arms crossed tight. Carlton couldn't hear what they were saying, but Wilburn was waving her hands all over the place. Boyd tilted his head a little, then glanced toward the cruiser, toward Carlton. He walked to the car slow and opened the back door. "Sir, I need to ask your name." Carlton looked up. "Lieutenant General Carlton Hayes, United States Army." Boyd blinked. "Did she see your ID?" She had it in her hand. Boyd nodded once and shut the door without another word. He turned to Wilburn. They moved off to the side. Voices were low. Wilburn's posture changed. Stiff. Defensive. Boyd looked toward the people watching, then back at her. A few seconds later, Boyd came back and opened the door again. "Sir," he said, "is there anyone you'd like to call?" Carlton nodded. "Yes, one person." Boyd reached in his pocket, pulled out his phone, and handed it over without thinking twice. Because this wasn't just about fixing a mistake anymore, it was about being responsible. Carlton sat in the back seat, cuffed, holding Deputy Boyd's phone in both hands, feeling awkward. The cuffs made it tough, but his fingers were steady. He knew the number by heart. There were only 3 people in the whole Department of Defense he ever called directly. This one was a direct line to someone who had cleared his missions all over the world. It rang once, twice, then a voice answered. "Major Kendall speaking. This is General Carlton Hayes. I'm being held against my will by the cops here in Schley County, Georgia. I'm in the back of a cruiser. I need you to prove who I am right now." There was a pause. Then, "General Hayes, are you safe?" "For now. I need them to know who I am. There are people all around recording. This officer didn't follow the rules from the start. I'm worried things might get worse." "Understood. Stay on the line. I'm calling the Pentagon liaison to DHS and the military police." The voice changed. A click. A new voice came on. "This is Commander Reeves. Sir, we're tracking where you are right now. I have your military plates pulled up. The local cops will hear from us in under 10 minutes. Carlton let out a breath. "Thank you, sir. Hang in there. And thank you for keeping it together." Carlton didn't say anything. He ended the call and gave the phone back to Deputy Boyd through the open door. Boyd took it, looked at Wilburn, who was still standing by her car, and walked away to make a call himself. Carlton heard parts of it. "Yes, sir. That's what he said." "Confirmed?" "Understood. I'll stand by." Carlton leaned back, watching through the window. Wilburn hadn't come any closer. Her face was tight, but her eyes kept darting between the phone screens aimed at her and the man sitting quiet in the back seat. 5 minutes went by. Then came the sound of new tires on the gravel. But these weren't cop cars. 3 black SUVs, no markings, but you knew they were government, windows darker than they should be, the kind of cars that acted like they owned the road. One stopped just in front of the cop cars, the second parked right behind Wilburn's cruiser. Doors open fast and smooth. 2 men in dark suits, with earpieces, and another in full Army uniform stepped out of the lead car. That was Colonel Errol Gaines, a name everyone in the military knew, but one that Wilburn probably never heard before. He walked right past Boyd, right past Wilburn, and opened the back door himself. "Sir," Gaines said, his voice calm but serious. "You all right?" Carlton nodded. "Fine. Just a little hurt pride. We got it from here." Gaines turned to Boyd. "Who's the boss here?" Boyd raised a hand, but his face said he wasn't happy about any of this. "I've been here for 10 minutes. That officer," he pointed to Wilburn, "started this." Gaines walked over to Wilburn, who finally straightened up and tried to act cool. "Do you know who that man is?" he asked her flat out. She puffed out her chest. "He didn't show me proper ID until you put him in cuffs. He told you his name, his rank. You held his federal ID. That's a 3-star general you locked in a car." Wilburn tried to say something, but her voice caught. The truth was hitting her hard. "I suggest you don't say another word," Gaines added. "This is being reported to your department, your sheriff, and the state attorney general." Wilburn's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Deputy Boyd quietly stepped aside and talked into his radio, asking dispatch to send the county sheriff. He didn't even look at her. Carlton got out of the cruiser on his own. His wrists were red, the skin rubbed raw from the cuffs. He didn't complain, didn't even rub them. Some of the people watching had moved closer, staying quiet, not sure what was going to happen next. "Sir," Colonel Gaines said to him, "do you want to press charges?" Carlton looked at Wilburn, then at the crowd behind her. Phones were still recording. His voice was steady. "Not yet. I want her to be held accountable through the right channels. Let the people see it. Some things don't need to be shouted. They just need to be seen." The crowd had gotten bigger. Word spread fast. First, whispers between cars, then social media. The videos, raw and real, were already going around before the sun started to set. Officer Wilburn stood near her cruiser, arms crossed so tight her knuckles were white. She didn't say anything. She didn't look at anyone, but you could feel things changing. What started as a show of power was now a silent fall. The badge on her chest didn't mean anything in that moment. It was just a piece of metal under the eyes of the people judging her. The Schley County Sheriff, Roger Nix, showed up 10 minutes later. His truck rolled up slow, kicking up dust, lights off. He was an older guy, in his late 60s, tall and broad, but you could see he had a limp. He didn't get out right away, just sat there, looking at everything. The government SUVs, the quiet officer, the general standing tall in front of the black car. When he finally got out, it got real quiet. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. "Somebody want to tell me what the heck is going on out here?" he asked, not yelling, but with the voice of a man who's used to being the loudest in the room without raising his voice. Colonel Gaines stepped forward. "Sheriff Nix, I'm Colonel Errol Gaines with the Department of the Army. One of your officers held the general against his will." Sheriff Nix looked from Gaines to Carlton, then to Wilburn. "Tracy, is that true?" She opened her mouth, then hesitated. He wouldn't listen. His car looked suspicious. "I followed the rules." "Did you run his plates?" "No." "Did you look at the ID he gave you?" "I didn't think it was real." Nix turned to her slow. "Didn't think it was real? Tracy, this man could get you fired with one phone call. And he hasn't. That should tell you something." Wilburn's face got red again, but she didn't say anything. Sheriff Nix walked closer to Carlton and held out his hand. "General Hayes, I'm sorry for what happened on my road. I don't know what to say." Carlton shook his hand, firm. He wasn't mad, just tired. "I appreciate it, Sheriff," he said. "But what happens next isn't about me. It's about what she did when she thought no one important was watching." The sheriff looked over his shoulder at the crowd. "Well, a lot of people saw it, and I have a feeling a whole lot more will." Colonel Gaines nodded. We'll be filing a formal complaint through DOJ channels. What she did wasn't just reckless, it was against the law. Wilburn took a step forward, like she wanted to say something to defend herself. But she saw the cell phones still pointing at her. And she didn't. Not one word. Sheriff Nick sighed. "Tracy, I'm putting you on leave right now. Give me your badge and your gun." She looked like she'd been hit hard. "Sheriff, that's not a request." Her hands moved slow, first to her badge, then to her belt. When she put both things in Nick's hand, he didn't even look at her, just turned back to the people watching, holding her badge like it weighed him down. "We'll let the investigators finish this. But let me be clear," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "This ain't how we treat people in my county. I don't care who you are. Nobody should go through what I saw in those videos." The teenager from earlier stepped forward, holding his phone. "Sir, do you want me to send you a copy?" Nix gave him a small smile. "Delete it. And son, thank you for filming." The kid nodded, feeling proud but not saying much. Carlton turned toward his car. The jacket was still in the back seat. He opened the door, slipped it on, and straightened the collar. The stars on his shoulders shined a little in the fading light. Wilburn turned away and walked to her cruiser. But she wasn't driving anywhere. Deputy Boyd followed her and took the keys from her hand. She wasn't going anywhere without answering questions first. This wasn't just a traffic stop anymore, it was a statement. By the next morning, the video was all over the news. What started as a 30-second clip uploaded by a teenager named Miles Reardon turned into a 2-minute video that got watched over 2 million times in less than half a day. The hashtags weren't subtle. Hashtag General Hayes, hashtag Schley County, hashtag profiling on camera. News vans lined the side of Highway 280 by noon. Their satellites pointed at the sky like it was a crime scene. But no crime had been committed, at least not by the man who'd been cuffed. General Hayes had quietly left the night before, choosing not to talk about it publicly. No press conference, no mad interview, just a short, private call to his wife, then a long, quiet drive to Fort Benning. He never raised his voice, never called for protests, and that made the story even bigger. The sheriff's office put out a statement. Clean, plain, with no real meaning. "We are aware of the incident involving Officer Tracy Wilburn and an unidentified driver. The matter is under investigation." They didn't mention that the unidentified driver had more experience than their whole department put together. But people knew. By the second day, protests were starting outside the sheriff's office. Not thousands, but enough to make the windows shake. Enough to get on every local TV station in Georgia. Veterans stood out front holding photos. Hayes in uniform. Hayes in the field. Hayes at the White House, getting a medal from a president. The weight of it all started to put pressure on every name connected to that county. Reporters found out about Wilburn's past. 3 complaints in the last 2 years, all quietly swept under the rug. 2 were from black drivers. 1 was from a single mom who said Wilburn followed her home and gave her a ticket for being rude. All of it came out. Wilburn kept quiet. Her lawyer said she didn't do anything wrong. But there was no way to justify what the public had seen. No rule that said it was okay to cuff a man without a reason after he showed you his federal ID. Meanwhile, General Hayes stayed out of the spotlight, didn't give interviews, didn't make any statements. His only public words came during a little veterans meeting in Columbus, Georgia, 3 days later. It wasn't even supposed to be on TV, but someone from the crowd recorded it anyway. He stood at a wooden podium in a church hall, wearing his uniform, hands folded in front of him. "I've faced hate on foreign soil. I've worked for people who didn't want me around. But I've never felt smaller than I did on that Georgia roadside," he said. Then he paused. "But I'm not going to be angry. That's not what this country needs. What we need is to be responsible for our actions. And more importantly, to be honest. We can't fix problems if we pretend they don't exist." The room stood up in silence. Not clapping, just quiet respect. 2 days after that, Sheriff Roger Nix said the investigation was over. Tracy Wilburn was fired. The county said she used too much force, didn't follow the rules, and abused her power. But behind closed doors, Nix told his staff the real story. She got caught doing something we all knew she'd been doing. That's what should make us ashamed. Her firing didn't shut everyone up, but it changed things. Schools started talking about respect and power. Local papers wrote about racism and about just following orders. And the Reardon family, the ones who filmed it all, were invited to Washington to be recognized for being good citizens. As for Carlton Hayes, he went back to Fort Benning and did his job. But the next time he spoke to new soldiers, he told them one thing: wear this uniform with honor. But some people will still see what they want to see. Don't let that stop you from standing tall. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. It's steady, and it never forgets. 3 weeks later, things had calmed down. But the story hadn't gone away. It was being talked about in college classes, in small-town barbershops, in church on Sundays. People weren't just talking about what happened, they were asking. And hopefully, this is the perfect ending for what you were looking for. I've really enjoyed working on this with you. Let me know if there's anything else. Asking why it keeps happening. Why a man can serve his country for 30 years, command thousands of soldiers, lead them into war, and still be seen as a threat because of what someone thought they saw. General Hayes never acted like a victim. That wasn't him. But he also didn't act like it didn't happen. He believed in being open, in being a good person, leading by example, not by shouting. He turned down a bunch of TV interviews, but said yes to speaking at a leadership meeting in Tallahassee. The room wasn't full of generals or reporters. It was full of teachers, first responders, and high school kids. Everyday people. He walked up to the microphone wearing a simple dark suit. No medals, no stars. I want to talk about holding back, he started. Not being quiet, not being weak. Real holding back. The kind that takes strength. Because when you're wronged, when you're embarrassed, you want to fight back. A pause. But power isn't about how hard you hit. It's about how much you choose not to. Another pause. You can't change how people see you, but you can change how you act when they're wrong about you. And that choice? That's where the real power is. Someone in the front, a young EMT, raised her hand. How did you stay so calm that day? He smiled a little. Because my life wasn't just about that one moment. It was about everything that came before it. That woman didn't know my story, but I did. Later, someone asked if he was angry. Yes, he answered, but I don't let it control me. I use it. Anger, when you hold on to it, weighs you down. But when you use it right, it makes you think clearer. It makes you speak up when it matters. Back in Schley County, things had changed. Every officer had to go through new training, not just about the rules, but about seeing things from other people's eyes. They had to learn about what they didn't even know they believed, not as a punishment, but to make things better. Sheriff Nix, even though he had his flaws, decided to bring in people from the outside, people who had never been cops, but had been unfairly judged because of who they were. They had community meetings and talked about things. It wasn't easy, but it was needed. Tracy Wilburn disappeared from the news. She moved to another county, and I heard she got a job as a security guard. No badge, no gun, just a uniform with her name on it. As for the Reardon family, they went back to their normal life. But Miles, the teenager who filmed it, kept recording. He started a YouTube channel where he talked to veterans, teachers, and regular folks about doing the right thing. His first video, called I Didn't Know Who He Was, but I Knew What Was Wrong. It got 500,000 views in the first week. Carlton watched it from his office one night, quiet. When the video was over, he closed his computer, stood up, and walked outside. The air was cool. The sky was still orange and pink from the sunset. He didn't feel proud. He didn't feel like he had won. He just felt safe. Honestly, staying calm made all the difference in the world. Turns out, it wasn't his position or anything that showed how messed up the situation was. Nope, it was the way he handled himself when he was getting treated like dirt. And you know what? It wasn't some fancy speech or a press conference that changed things. It was him just keeping his cool. It was being a decent human being. It was the honest truth caught on some phone and shared all over by folks he didn't even know. That's what finally got a few people to see things in a different light. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is just stand there while everyone's watching the craziness unfold. If you felt something when you heard this story, or if it made you stop and think about how quick we are to judge people, then take a sec and pass it on. Don't be afraid to speak up. Get it on video. Just say something when something feels wrong, you know? And hey, if you think more stories like this need to be told, hit that subscribe button.